Good evening. I'm Brad Cantrell. I'm the acting vice chair of the Plan Commission, and I'm going to be calling the meeting to order. It's 5:30. We do have a quorum. The first item of business will be some comments from our technical facilitator regarding the process of the meeting. Jesse?
All right, welcome to our virtual Plan Commission meeting. We're going to cover a few basic items before beginning. If you lose connection at any point during the meeting, you can reconnect by clicking the link or calling the number in your original email. To members and city staff, members, if you are able, please activate your video and keep it on for the duration of the meeting. Staff, if you are able, please activate your video when you are speaking. Use the raise hand feature when you'd like to be recognized to speak or ask questions. Staff, click raise hand when you are asked a question. The chair will do the best to call on committee members in the order in which hands are raised. Lowering your hand will take you out of the queue. Members of the public who have registered to speak, the name you entered in Zoom must match the name you entered in registration. You will remain muted until called upon. The clerk will tell you when your time is up. After speaking, a member of the body may ask you a question. If you need to share documentation with the commission, please send it to the email listed on today's agenda. Chair, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Jesse. The next item of business is public comment. I don't think that we have any public comment this evening. The next item is communications, disclosures, and recusals. The members of the body should make any required disclosures or recusals under the city's ethics code. If anyone has any of those, please raise your hand. Seeing none. The next item of business is, Alder Field.
So specifically item 8, the demolition of a handful of residential units, one of which I lived in for 3 years in 2013 through 2016. So my landlord is one of the sellers of one of those properties, or my former landlord, but I have no financial relationship with him or the property or anything like that. So wanted to disclose.
Okay, thank you, Alder. The next item of business is minutes of the April 24th regular meeting. Are there any changes to the minutes as presented? If not, can I have a motion to approve? Yes. Motion by Commissioner Soltheim, second by Alder Figueroa Cole. Thank you. All those in favor? If there's no raised hands, I'll assume unanimous consent. Seeing no raised hands, the minutes are approved by unanimous consent. The next item of business is the schedule of meetings. The next meeting is May 22nd. In June, we have a regular meeting on June 12th and the 26th. And we have a special meeting on Thursday, June 22nd at 5 o'clock at the municipal building in room 215. Proceeding to the next item, the Plan Commission, it's a custom of the Plan Commission to have items on the consent agenda. And those items are items that staff believes that the application has been sufficiently reviewed and warrants approval with the conditions placed upon it by the various city agencies, that the applicant accepts those conditions, and there are no individuals who have registered to speak in opposition. The items that are on our consent agenda this evening are items 2, 6, 7, which will be referred to a future meeting to be determined. Items 12 and 13, Items 17, 18, 19 will be referred to the May 22nd meeting. Item 20 is to be referred to the May 22nd meeting. Item 21, 22, items 23 to 25 will be referred to the May 22nd meeting, and items 26 through 28 will be referred to a future meeting to be determined. Do any of the commission members wish any of the consent agenda items to be pulled off the consent? If so, raise your hand. Seeing no raised hands, I'll proceed with the consent agenda. Item number 2 is is Legistar 77393, partially discontinuing and vacating public street right-of-way located at the southwest corner of the intersection of McKee Road and Maple Grove Drive for a planned development amendment and certified survey map being located in the northwest quarter of the northwest quarter of Section 12, Range 6 North, Range 8 East in the city of Madison. Item number 12, item number 6, which will be referred to a future meeting as to be determined, is Legistar 77249, creating section 28.022 to 00623 of the Madison General Ordinances to change the zoning of 3801, 3809, 3813, and 3859 East Washington Avenue, and 3909, 3913, and the northwesterly portion of 3917 Lean Road, the 17th Altered District from commercial corridor transitional district to regional mixed use. Item number 7 to be referred as well, Legistar 77250, creating section 28.022 to 00624 of the Madison General Ordinances to change the zoning of various properties located at 1754, 1755, 1798, and 1799 Thier Road, 1745 Parkside Drive, 4002, 4016, and 4201 East Washington Avenue, 4102 to 4202 and 4302 to 4602 East Town Boulevard, 2627 to 2651 East Springs Drive, and 4802 to 4814 Anamark Drive in the 17th Alder District to Commercial Corridor Transition District to Regional Mixed Use District. And creating sections 28.022 to 00625 of the Madison General Ordinances to change the zoning of all or portions of property generally addressed at 43, 53, 89, and 135 East Town Mall, 4301, 4323, 4505, 4601, and 4725 East Town Boulevard, 2201, 2245 Sear Road, and 1701 Egan Road, 4303 East Town Way, and 4602 East Springs Drive in the 17th Alder District to Commercial Center District to RMX. The next item for on the consent is item number 12, Registrar 77008, 426 South Yellowstone Drive in the 19th Alder District, consideration of a demolition permit to demolish a two-story office building. And the accompanying item at item number 13, Registrar 77010, 426 South Yellowstone Drive, 19th Alder District, consideration of a conditional use in the suburban employment district for dwelling units in a mixed-use building, and consideration of a conditional use in the SE district for a building exceeding 5 stories and 68 feet in height to allow construction of a 6-story mixed-use building with 750 square feet of commercial space and 147 apartments. The next item for consent will be item number 17, Registrar 77209, creating sections 28.022 to 00629 of the Madison General Ordinances to change the zoning of property located at 702 North Midvale Boulevard and 401 North Seagull Road in the 11th Alder District from Plan Development, General Development Plan District to Plan Development Specific Implementation District. The next item for consent is item number 18, Registrar 77011, 131 East Lakeside Street, 13 Alder District, consideration of a conditional use in the suburban employment district for restaurant tavern to allow a restaurant tavern tenant in a mixed-use building with outdoor eating area. The next items for referral are items 19 and which is referred to the May 22nd meeting at the request of the applicant. It's Registrar 77013. Also, a referral is item number 20, Registrar 77018, which is also referred to the May 22nd meeting. Item number 21 is on the consent, Registrar 77019, 2002 Pancratz Street, the 12th Alder District, consideration of a conditional use in the suburban employment district for indoor recreation, consideration of a conditional use in the SE district for a restaurant tavern, and consideration of a conditional use in the SE district for an outdoor eating area, serving later than 9 p.m. and to allow a brewery to be converted into an indoor volleyball facility with restaurant, tavern, and outdoor eating area. Item number 22 is also on the consent, Registrar 77020, 220 Cottage Grove Road, 15th Alder District, consideration of a conditional use in the commercial corridor transition district for a convenience store to allow construction of an addition. Items number 23 through 25 should be referred to the May 22nd meeting at the request of the applicant. Item number 23 is Registrar 76506. Item 24 is Registrar 76589, and item 25 is Registrar 76508. Items 26, 27, and 28 are all related and should be referred to the future meeting at a date to be determined at the request of the applicant. Registrar item 26 is Registrar 772 07. Item 27 is Legistar 77375. And item 28 is Legistar 76590. I will open the public hearing, and there are no speakers here to comment on these items since everyone is in support. I will close the public hearing and ask for a motion for approval. Motion by Alder Field. Do I have a second? Second by Commissioner Menendez. I will assume unanimous consent unless I see a raised hand in opposition. Yes, Alder Figueroa, do you have a question? No.
I was the second. I'm sorry.
Okay, thank you. So if I see no raised hands, I will assume unanimous consent for the referral items and the consent agenda. Seeing no raised hands, the motion is unanimously approved. Thank you. Moving on to the regular items on the agenda now. We have item number 3, which is Legistar 77560. The Planning Department staff's update of the West Area Plan. I believe Colin Punt will give a presentation on this item along with Ben Zellers. So who goes first?
That'll be me. I will kick it off.
Great, thank you.
Jesse, can I share my screen?
Yep, you should be able to now.
All right, thank you. All right. Okay, I will. I'll kick this off. My name's Colin Punt. For those who don't know me, I'm usually on the other side doing development review. But there's some new faces in the Plan Commission, so I am here with the rest of the project team for the West Area Plan. Ben Zellers will also be going through a couple items here. And then we're also joined by Linda Horvath, Brianna Collins, and Urvashi Martin. So this is going to be a quick update for the West Area Plan. This is one of the 12 framework area plans that the city is doing. This is one of the first 2. So I'm going to just quickly go over that planning framework, what the area plans are, and discuss some of the demographics for the West area and the boundary. Ben Zellers is going to then take over and talk about underlying plans, the partnership that we have with the Parks Division as we are both doing planning processes in this area. He'll talk about process and timeline and where we are right now, what our next steps are. And then a couple brief questions. So the planning framework is a new planning template that the city has recently implemented. Right now, there are 2 plans that are in process: the Northeast, which is labeled 1, and West, which is 2nd in the sequence. Once these plans are done, we will continue on to the other plans as noted in the sequence here. The West Area Plan, again here on the left side of your screen, has seen some significant growth between 2010 and 2020. Not as much as the downtown areas or some of the far edges, which are seeing a lot of new growth, but definitely healthy growth for already being built out and having established neighborhoods. So the framework plans will cover the entire city. As I noted, there are 12 of them. Once we write the plan for each of the planning framework areas, those will then be updated every decade. So we will just continue doing the same sequence, updating them on a regular basis. We're really working to include an emphasis on reaching residents and communities underrepresented in city processes. We have community partnerships with organizations that are already doing work in the community in the West area, as well as individual residents that are helping us to get the word out, connect with people that we would normally not hear from. We're also really working with these area plans to coordinate with other city initiatives. As I mentioned earlier, we have a partnership with the Parks Division. We're kind of doubling up on a number of our engagement opportunities and meetings. If we're hosting a meeting, the Parks Division has staff there to answer questions or to gain input on their planning process. We're also doing an open house at the Lucier Community Center on Wednesday. And there will be staff from a number of different city agencies that will be there to answer questions about things that are going on in the West area, whether it be transit related and BRT or stormwater related, or parks related, just a number of different things. And then we're hoping that doing the plans for all of the various different types or parts of the city, and then updating them on a regular basis, that we will be able to reduce the number of outdated and overlapping sub-area plans. As I'm sure the Planning Commission is aware, there are some areas that have numerous plans. Often those can have conflicts in them. So this is simplifying it and potentially getting rid of some of the outdated recommendations. The area plans specifically are guiding physical changes within those areas. So land use, growth and redevelopment, those are the big things that we're often talking about. We'll have recommendations for transportation improvements, and this includes everything from roads to the bike network, pedestrians and transit as well. We'll also have recommendations for parks and open space. Again, we're partnering with the Parks Division to make sure we include all of that, and then also covering all of the public improvements, important public facilities, utility projects, stormwater management, amongst other things. Some of the very detailed things that we take in as public comments, or ideas that aren't really necessary to include in the plan at that level of detail, can be passed along to the relevant city departments. So we're getting those comments to the people that they need to be with. And then we are not starting from scratch. This is an area. Many areas of the city already have plans. We have the comprehensive plan, which was adopted in 2018, kind of laying the groundwork. Complete Green Streets effort that has come through in the last year or so. Many underlying adopted plans, watershed studies that are. I think the engineering division is getting near the end of updating all of those. In the 2018, the August 2018 flood, the portions of the west side got hit pretty hard. So it's important to include those. We have the analysis of impediments to fair housing choice. Very important for informing housing portion of the plan, the Metro Network redesign, which is being implemented in June, BRT, which is now under construction, and many other plans. So, it's just an iterative process where these plans inform the West area plan, and then feedback that we receive will inform the plan development and those other initiatives. So again, here is the map of the West area, roughly bounded by Middleton and Lake Mendota on the north, Shorewood Hills and Midvale Boulevard on the east, and then the Beltline on the south and the west. It's about 5,600 acres, around 30,000 residents, so maybe a little bit bigger than the entire city of Fitchburg, more than 15,000 housing units. It's actually more than 1/4 of the residents in the West Area Plan are people of color, and then there are obviously many important commercial areas. There are about 25,000 jobs that are located in the West Area as well. So it's not just economic development is also an important part of this planning process. I'm going to actually now hand it over to Ben Zellers, and I believe he's going to take over for the rest of the presentation portion.
Thank you, Colin.
Thanks, Colin. So there are a number of underlying plans that are within the West area: Spring Harbor, University Hill Farms, Midvale Heights, Westmoreland, and the recently adopted Odana Area Plan, which was adopted about 18 months ago. So given that the Odana Area Plan is the most recently adopted one, we're certainly going to be using that to guide development and creation of plan recommendations in that area. We're reviewing the other plans and the elements within those for recommendations that are applicable to the West Area Plan as far as the level of detail that we're looking for in these area plans, and are also consistent with city policies and priorities. One of the things going into this process, as well as the Northeast process, is considering the potential retirement of underlying plans. As we've kind of began engaging with the public on this planning process, we've gotten some concern by folks feeling that in some cases, neighborhood plan recommendations are still appreciated and still needed. On the other hand, there's certainly, especially for some of the older plans, some perhaps outdated recommendations or things that no longer really fit with the 2018 comprehensive plan recommendations. So we're really going to need to strike a balance, I think, on those as far as absorbing recommendations that are still pertinent for the city and considering and discussing retirement potentially for some of the older plans. Possibly a dividing line could be 2013, which is when our current zoning code was adopted. Plans prior to that tended to have a little bit more along the lines of kind of specific recommendations that on things that at that time were not necessarily covered by the zoning code, but now are covered. So that could be a dividing line, but we're certainly interested in any more discussion or feedback that the Plan Commission may have on plan retirement. I know this was discussed a bit, certainly as the planning framework was advancing through the approval process. If you could do next slide, please. Colin mentioned the partnership with Parks. And so they are kind of doing a parallel process, and we're interacting with them and vice versa for our planning processes. They're doing a parks development plan process, really focusing on neighborhood parks and mini parks. Those are all shown here on the map. There are a number of them in this West area. So it does leave out the much larger parks like Owen and the community parks like Garner, which really have their own master plans. But this is a parks development plan process that will guide park improvements over the next 10 to 15 years and look at parks' existing conditions, recent improvements, and planned improvements or expansion if any is needed. And so with that, we're definitely, as Colin mentioned again, partnering with Parks on public engagement, and we're going to be giving an update to the Board of Parks Commissioners on this process as well. Next slide. Colin mentioned also the watershed studies. So this area, I believe, now is completely covered by watershed studies that have been undertaken. The 5 of them listed at left there. These recommend improvements to the stormwater management system, and so that's something that will be integrated into this plan and is being discussed with the public as we progress through this planning process, including at the open house that is upcoming on Wednesday. Next slide. So as far as public engagement that we've undertaken so far, we had an interactive map that had been posted to our project website. I think the most successful interactive mapping exercise I've seen for any of the projects that I've worked on. We got over 450 comments. So we're kind of reviewing and digesting those right now. We had 2 virtual meetings, one at noon, one at 6 p.m. We have a survey posted to the project web page, still open for folks that maybe were not able to attend any of our virtual or in-person meetings. We had an in-person meeting in March. We've also been visiting with some students at Memorial that are participating in the People program and are interested and have done a student project on planning in the area. Next slide. Just wanted to touch on some public feedback themes that we've seen from folks thus far, and we'll be continuing with public engagement in the coming months as well. But overall, there's been an appreciation for green space, tree canopy, bus service, just the park system in general. There has been some concerns and need expressed for bike route improvements, especially north-south routes, which are currently lacking in the area. Had many people mention the need for filling in sidewalk gaps, so kind of discontinuous sidewalk network in areas. A desire to really focus new development and redevelopment on commercial areas and parking lots. Many folks mentioning that some areas are lacking in amenities as far as retail and restaurants, and having those within close proximity. Folks mentioning Research Park, Old Sauk Road, and Whitney Way, south to Tokay. And just wanted to note that there's a full summary of these available on the project website that was linked in the Plan Commission memo. And feedback thus far on engagement has really attracted primarily homeowners. And so this is something that we're looking to balance out with further engagement of renters, especially through our community partners that we are really starting with right now in earnest. Next slide. Just wanted to mention, I won't go through all of these, just some overall interactive mapping themes. Talked about the bike infrastructure improvements. In addition to the north-south routes, there were some concerns expressed at intersections and interchanges. A little bit of conflicting comments on Whitney Way, north of Mineral Point Road, as far as some people wanting to change it back to what it was with higher speed limit and more traffic lanes and on-street parking. There's again appreciation for parks and wooded areas. At the same time, some parks folks feel need some additional connectivity, shown in 5 and 6 on the map. Several problem intersections that people called out. So that's something we'll certainly be looking at and discussing with engineering and transportation. Some folks advocating for narrower streets in some areas. And as I mentioned, really focusing on redevelopment in certain areas of the overall planning area. Next slide. So there's more engagement to come. Already mentioned the open house. This is at Lucier this Wednesday, 6:30 to 8 p.m. And featuring a number of different departments and divisions in addition to planning that have ongoing projects in the area or upcoming projects in the near future. I also mentioned community partners. We had an orientation meeting with several community partners last week, and they will be undertaking outreach at community events, doing some door-to-door outreach, publicizing this effort through social media and other methods. Then we're also working with our economic development division on doing some targeted business outreach. And then we'll have some additional events and open houses and meetings over the summer and likely into the fall as the process continues. Next slide. So overall, we're in this spring column of the process, having that open house that I mentioned before, be meeting with some interagency staff teams in upcoming months. Having meeting with you here this evening in Parks, as I mentioned, and we'll be starting to draft some kind of preliminary concepts and talking about opportunities within the area. After that, we'll progress on through with plan drafting and some additional engagement. Then would anticipate having a final draft late this year for the city adoption process into next year. Next slide. And so as we showed in the Plan Commission memo for this evening, we have a few questions in addition to any thoughts and feedback that you may have otherwise in addition to these. Questions concerning if there are any Plan Commission thoughts on transportation, parks, or facilities issues or land use within the West area, whether the Commission has any recommendations on public engagement over the next several months. And if there are any general thoughts or feedback on potential retirement of older underlying plans. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Commissioner Cantrell and the rest of the Plan Commission for any discussion and feedback.
Thank you, Ben. Do any of the Plan Commission members have any questions or comments regarding the presentation? Yes, Commissioner Shepard.
Yeah, I would just like to comment. I think it's great in terms of the outreach plan that was laid out that Colin talked about earlier that Ben, you followed up on. So that sounds very robust. And again, it sounds very good. Thank you very much for taking a real hard look at that and improving, again, that process. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Shepard. Commissioner Spencer. Let me unmute you.
Oh, I just unmuted myself.
Okay, good. Thank you.
I'm going to assume that you can hear me.
Yes.
I had a question, two questions. Colin had mentioned reaching out to certain groups in terms of outreach to get more participation. And then Ben had mentioned reaching out to renters. Other than reaching out to renters, what other groups are you hoping to seek more input from? Is it just the renters, or are there other groups that you're trying to get more participation from in this area?
Really, through our community partners, we're definitely looking to engage with populations of color as well. We know that, looking back to some previous planning processes, that doesn't always take place through the traditional avenues and methods
Right.
that we sometimes employ. So that's really another focus of our community partners, and we'll be working with them for that aspect of outreach as well. And one of the reasons really why we look to have our open house at Lucier later this week on Wednesday is because of their engagement with all of those populations, really, that we hope to get feedback from for this process. So we've been working with them on publicizing the process, and we're actually holding this during one of their food pantry pickup nights. So we're hoping that might generate some interest from folks who maybe don't necessarily always engage with city processes like this.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Good to hear. And then about the speed limits on Whitney Way and other streets on the west side, I know there's been some changes on Whitney Way. I think Mineral Point, there was some decrease in the speed limits. And, you might not have the answer to this tonight. There might be a question for transportation, but has there been a reduction in, accidents since they've reduced the speed limits, or has it been too short of a time period to really tell? Maybe that's a question for the transportation group on Wednesday at the Lucier Center. If people attend that. I was just curious about that, if you knew.
Yeah, I don't know offhand on the latest statistics. It might not have been quite long enough for them to do a good before or after comparison, but I can ask to see if they have any early thoughts based on what they maybe have seen so far.
Yeah. And in terms of transportation and safety, I mean, I live in the west area for this plan area, practically in the middle of it. And those speed limits, it's a great concern. And it's just interesting that people had feedback that they wanted it to go up, because I guess I'm a group of people that would prefer that it slow down, but people love to speed down Whitney Way. I think it's, they're coming off the Beltline and just want to get to University Avenue as fast as possible, possibly, or conversely, they want to get from University Avenue to the Beltline as fast as possible. But I'm glad there's a lot of attention on the plan to that. So those are my only thoughts for now.
By no means was that, a consensus or anything. It just kind of some dissonance and differing thoughts and feedback on that particular issue.
Yeah. That's all I have for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Spencer. Commissioner Menendez.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. I would support retiring the old underlying plans. I think that would make sense to bring everything in line with current zoning and planning and comprehensive plan. So that way everything's kind of on the same page. One of the things, the interactive map, if that could be available as each of the draft iterations comes out, I think that'd be great to get feedback from folks as well, especially since you had so many, if that's possible and feasible. And then my question I have is for the Adana area, if the Southwest plan bleeds into it, is making any of these changes going to conflict with that Southwest plan as well?
The Southwest plan, we did look at that, and I kind of had just a small footnote in that map of underlying plans. There is some overlap, but really that plan is heavily focused on areas south of the Beltline and didn't have too much to say on the portions of that plan that are north of the Beltline. And so I don't really foresee many conflicts or issues with that. And even so, I think largely the Odana area plan overlaps that and would kind of take precedence, I would say, being more recently adopted anyways.
Okay, thank you. And then it seems to be heavy residential. I saw your plan to reach out to more commercial and retail. I think that would definitely help with this to make it a little bit more comprehensive, get more of that feedback. So appreciate that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Alder Figueroa Cole, you're next.
Thank you. A quick question. So does the work that the DOT is potentially proposing impacting Whitney Way part of this plan? There's some discussions about adding an exit between like closer to Tokay Boulevard, which kind of will release the stress on the Whitney Way exit. Just reminds me when Commissioner Spencer was talking about from Whitney Way to University. Is that part of the plan? Any of the DOT potential changes?
I think the DOT is kind of doing a general review for not necessarily possible new exits from the Beltline, but possible underpasses to kind of relieve the bottlenecks that are currently in place to cross the Beltline, which pretty much has to occur at interchanges. So that's something that there were some recommendations in the Odana area plan for additional underpasses, and I would imagine that we would want to carry those forward given the potential benefits that would be in place for that, kind of allowing additional north-south movement without having to go through interchanges.
So will that impact the plan when it comes to other things such as biking access and connectivity and things like that?
Yeah, I think that would be, if it's possible and if we're able to work with the Wisconsin DOT on adding those additional connections, I think that would be of great benefit to the bike and pedestrian network as well, because the interchanges right now are very unfriendly, I would say, to bicyclists and pedestrians. And I think they can be improved from their current conditions, but I think there's to some extent only so much you can do when it's a highway interchange to improve ped bike conditions. And so if we're able to have non-interchange crossings, that would be great for the bike and ped network as well.
They have a meeting coming up. I can send you the information, but anyhow, thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Field?
Thank you. I have a comment and then a suggestion. So the comment is in response to item 3 here. Retirement of older underlying plans. I would also support retiring the components that conflict with modern and more contemporary planning, like the comprehensive plan, in at least a transparent way where we are logging which components are being retired so that that's not done kind of out of sight. And then my comment, I had a second comment about item 2 here. Public engagement. So given that a lot of planning helps us to think long-term about land uses and the future of the city, I think it's great when we can hear from students. And I love to hear that there's a project collab going on with some students, I think at West High School, about planning. And I'm interested in seeing more of that kind of engagement, or perhaps classroom visits to hear more from students about what they think about their neighborhoods, their streets, and their parks too. Just a comment for the future.
Yes. Great. Yeah,
Thank you.
thanks. I mean, I think we have had some really good discussions and engagement with those memorial students that are participating in the People program. And so, yeah, I agree. That's an important component.
Thank you for the correction.
I guess I would, on item number 3, the retirement of the old underlying plans, I think using the benchmark of 2013, I think is an interesting one, and because that included a lot of new concepts and regulations that weren't in effect when the older plans were adopted. And I think several of those concepts were included within those. So I think that's very interesting. As I understand, there's no action by the Plan Commission on this item. Alder Figueroa Cole, do you have another comment?
So on regards to number 3 there, what do the underlying plans have expiration dates?
No, they do not. And so that's kind of one of the issues that we're talking about with this plan retirement, is addressing that, because in some areas, other areas of the city, especially East Isthmus, for example, there are already many overlapping plans. And so we're kind of hoping to potentially, if plan retirement is to be part of this, eliminate some of those conflicts between overlapping plans.
Yeah, I mean, I think looking at it from an age perspective, it's super relevant. I mean, in my district, I think I only have a couple, 2 or 3 plants, and they're from the same area, and they are very, very old. So it's not just that, and it's not just that the plant is old, it's just that the population has changed so many times over since those plants were created. They don't really make sense at all. So I don't know if we can implement something where they get reviewed, perhaps not at the same frequency as the master plan, but at some level, that would be my input on that one.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Alder Tischler, do you have a comment?
Yeah, just a quick comment, both on number 2 and 3. They're both kind of related. Before we talk seriously about retiring plans, many of these plans it took a long time for those plans to be developed. And again, some of us have been around the neighborhood for several decades, but if you suddenly start taking away those existing plans that the neighborhood spent a long time developing, a lot of engagement, just remove them, that's not going to be helping with your number 2 there, how to engage with the public. So just a word of caution there.
Thank you. Thank you very much. If there are no other comments, this item doesn't require any action. Therefore, we'll just move on to the public hearing section of the agenda. The next item under that is item number 4, which is Legistar 77095, amending the City of Madison official map to establish mapped reservations for future streets and highways in the City of Madison, consisting with recommendations in the adopted Greater Easttown Area Plan. And this is High Cross Boulevard and East Springs Drive extension near Easttown Mall. Can we have a staff presentation on this item? Yes, Tim.
Thank you, Chair Cantrell, members of the Plan Commission, Tim Parks with planning staff. Items 5 and 6 relate to the city's official map, which is a planning tool enabled by state statute section 62.23 parent 6, which allows a municipality to map and reserve land for future streets, transportation corridors, public buildings, parks, playgrounds, greenways, and the like. The City of Madison's official map is governed locally by MGO section 16.25 and was adopted originally in 1966 and breaks the city into a series of quarter sections with a map for each quarter section adopted by Common Council. The official map identifies the width and location of reservation for the above listed facilities. It is important to note that an officially mapped reservation is not the actual land needed to construct whichever the future public facility might be. Details of the public improvement are determined subsequent to official mapping and closer to the time of the construction. And most notably, the city obtains land that it puts on its official map in one of two ways, either through the dedication of that reserved area as part of the subdivision process or through the city's acquisition of the reserved area for that specified purpose. All the dedications or acquisitions require separate approval by the Common Council. Whenever the official map is amended, it requires a Common Council resolution following notice or published notice in the city's newspaper of record and mailed notices to property owners within 300 feet of the area that's subject to the amendment. Items 5 and 6 on tonight's agenda pertain to the Greater Easttown Area Plan, which was adopted by the Common Council in February of 2022. On April 18th of 2023, the two resolutions before the Plan Commission tonight were introduced by the Common Council to map 3 reservations. Quickly bring up a map that shows those. The first one is actually 2 reservations. This is 77095, which is the partial mapping of High Crossing Boulevard southerly from its current terminus at East Springs Drive to sort of reserve an area where a future extension could occur going over to Zaire Road, which is just at the edge of the screen. We also have on resolution ID 77095, the extension of East Springs Drive along the sort of southeasterly edge of the East Town Mall properties, going through a mixture of surface parking and undeveloped land, ultimately teeing into Lean Road, just east of East Town Way and west of the Zaire Road, Thompson Drive roundabout with Lean Road. The other item before the Plan Commission tonight, 77096, is the southerly extension of Parkside Drive from where it ends in a dead end about a quarter to half a mile south of Lean Road, extending that in the dashed black area to Mendota Street, opposite Juniper Avenue. In this case, crossing through the southeasterly half of a residential property at 1206 Mendota Street and potentially impacting some accessory buildings, but not the principal residence on that property. I will stop my presentation there, and I'm happy to answer any questions that the Plan Commission has about official mapping I should note that all three streets that are before the Plan Commission tonight were priority street connections identified in the Greater Easttown area plan. And I will also note that official mapping most primarily affects impacted properties by not allowing permits to be issued for new construction or the enlarging of an existing building within the officially mapped reservation. There is a memo from former Assistant City Attorney John Strange that is attached to both files, 77095 and 77096, that speak to the purpose of official mapping impacts on properties. And that was prepared originally for official mapping that occurred in the Milwaukee Street Special and Area Plan area a couple of years ago, but staff does feel that the information contained in that memo is still current and salient to the questions before the commission tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Because Tim addressed both of those items 4 and 5, I'm going to read item number 5 also. Item number 5 is Legistar 77096, amending the City of Madison official map to establish mapped reservations for future streets and highways in the City of Madison, consistent with the recommendations in the adopted Greater Easttown Area Plan. And it is Parkside Drive extension to Mendota Street. I will open the public hearing and ask Heather to call on any registrants that have listed for speaking tonight. Heather, are there any registrants?
Yes, there's one registrant on item 5, and it's David Milbrat of Mendota Street, opposed and wishing to speak.
Mr. Milbrat, you have 3 minutes. Please proceed.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
My wife, Terry Holzum, and I, David Milbrat, are the private owners of the property at 1206 Mendota Street. This is the property through which the proposed extension of Parkside Drive would cut directly through in order to end up at Mendota Street. We oppose agenda item 77096 to amend the City of Madison official map to include the extension of Parkside Drive to Mendota Street. Adding this extension of Parkside Drive to the official map would eliminate any future development plans for our property for an indefinite period of time into the future. We have been exploring the idea of building additional housing, but this proposal would eliminate any possible options and significantly reduce the value of our property should we wish to sell it before the demolitions of our buildings and the road construction begins. At least as far back as 1999, we have known that the Madison City Planning has been considering a number of other possible extensions of Parkside Drive, none of which involve cutting through our property. Now, 24 years later, nothing has been built, and yet there's this new planned street extension which, if it were built, would cut our property in half, demolish the barn, the tobacco shed, eliminate our floral business by destroying our flower production gardens and buildings. As owners of the property that is directly impacted by this proposal, we're also shocked by the lack of communication from the City Planning Division and would like to point out that receiving a 4x5 postcard notice, which does not include any specific information regarding the consequences to our property, was totally inadequate. For these reasons, we oppose agenda item 7796 to amend the City of Madison official map to include the extension of Parkside Drive to Mendota Street.
Thank you, Mr. Milbrat. Heather, are there any other registrants for tonight's meeting on these 2 items?
There are not.
There are not. Okay. Do any of the commission members have any questions for this registrant? Seeing none, I will then close the public hearing. Do the commission members have any questions for staff? Yes, Commission Member Solheim.
Thank you. So I had some back and forth with Tim on this. I just wanted to clarify. how can the official map be viewed by residents who are looking to see how their property or maybe a potential property that they're interested in are impacted?
The official map is maintained in the office of the city engineer by ordinance, but right now it is not available for viewing online, at least not in its entirety.
Okay. That's all I have for right now. I do have more of a comment on that. Thank you.
Does any other commission member have any comments on this item? Yes, Commissioner Member Shepherd.
Oh, yeah, I'd just like to ask the question in terms of the process of contacting the property owner, that sort. Was everything covered, or was there anything else do you think that we could have or should have done, again, that were basically impacting a nearby property in such a significant way?
In consultation with folks who were on the Greater Easttown Area Plan project team, we provided an initial mailing at the start of that planning process and did a second mailing near the end to encourage people to review the draft plan recommendations, including in the plan the areas that were to be officially mapped and proactively rezoned. The former being applicable in the case of the Milbrandt property. There was also outreach with neighborhood associations and then District Alder Gary Halverson. And then fast forwarding to this effort, the postcard that the speaker referred to in his testimony was the postcard notice that we're required to provide by Madison General Ordinances, notifying property owners within 300 feet of the area to be officially mapped of the date, time, and location of the public hearing. And those are required to be sent to be postmarked not less than 10 days prior to the Plan Commission meeting.
Thank you.
Commissioner Soltheim.
Thanks. Sorry, I had one or two more questions. Given for the extension of Parkside Drive, was it ever considered to adjust that so it could go on either side of the property? Does it have to line up with, I understand why it's lining up with Juniper Avenue, but at the same time, it seems like the intention of this is to funnel people to Mendota Street, not necessarily through the neighborhood of Juniper. So I'm wondering if it could be adjusted to either side of the property that's impacted.
That is something that we could look at. In talking with colleagues earlier today, they indicated that there were some concerns expressed by the Traffic Engineering Division about the spacing. If, hang on, let me just pull this back up so that I'm sure you all have a photographic memory of me showing this to you a few moments ago, but just in case you didn't, I'll zoom it up a little bit. So Duncan Drive, there was some concern, not like an absolute prohibition, but some concern that bringing the street along the northern edge of the Milbrandt property could bring that intersection closer to Duncan Drive. Usually we like to line up intersections as much as possible and avoid offset intersections because even in low volume situations, you can have turning movements kind of interfering or intersecting with one another. I don't think, however, that would be an absolute prohibition. I think, especially in the case of Juniper, which is a very low density street with only about a dozen or so single family residents on it, we wouldn't be concerned about impacts necessarily from that street. Duncan catches a few more properties, but not many more. So it's possible that an offset intersection could be studied here and determined to be okay. And then likewise, moving down closer to the intersection of Mendota and Sycamore. We'd probably have to take a little bit closer look at that. The way Mendota and Sycamore come together right now, you kind of veer off to the northwest if you're coming west on Sycamore, and you continue on Mendota Street up to the intersection at East Wash, the signalized intersection at East Wash by Hy-Vee. And Sycamore kind of continues after you make a purposeful left turn to continue onto Sycamore. So bringing another street in there, or right now, in fact, and I am going to try to annotate this without looking too terribly silly. There is right now something that does this on the official map that goes back a number of years. I don't recall exactly when, but Parkside Drive is officially mapped to come down and then follow along the edge of Mayfair Park to intersect into Sycamore now. So, whether something like that could be studied and maybe some adjustment be made. And the speaker did make reference to something that was done about 24 years ago regarding Parkside Drive. And that would actually be this image, which is copied in from the Carpenter Ridgeway Starkweather, a plan that was adopted around 2000 that called for Parkside to come down and actually intersect with the Stoughton Road Commercial Avenue intersection further to the south. But you can see here that there's a connector street that would actually come in between Duncan and Juniper along the speaker's northerly property line. And actually another street that was shown if more intensive development was done in this area to provide local street access there. But, maybe something like this street could be further studied and maybe, like was seemingly okay when this plan was adopted, which preceded the Greater Easttown plan by 20 some odd years. But that had a similar local street coming in. I think the one difference between what you're seeing in this plan and what's being proposed here is Parkside Drive would probably be a busier connection than that 1999 plan showed, because that major north-south connection would be, coming through and teeing into Mendota at Juniper, or, somewhere along this property line. And that's probably going to be a busier street. I don't want to say necessarily a collector street, but probably a busier local street than the connector that was shown in this plan.
Thank you, Tim. That was very, very helpful. One more question, kind of more of a general official mapping question, following up on my question before. Clearly we're using official mapping is not a new tool, but we are using it more, which I think is very, very smart for long-term planning, but it does, make me think more about how we are communicating that to the public. So I'm curious, if I'm someone buying my first house or something in Madison, how do I know to look for the official map to know if it's, if I wanted to buy this property and I didn't know that I could be impacted from doing what I want to do on it? How would I know to do that?
Well, that's something that my initial reaction to that would be to contact your local planning department and ask, because it's a little more official, no pun intended, than recommendations and adopted plans. I think sometimes folks who buy property are surprised to find out what they're zoned, that there might be plan recommendations that apply to the property that might be pretty different than what they see, when they look at the property in person or online. However, And the official map is maybe an extension of that you don't really know unless you ask, what sort of things affect your property. Is your sewer in the front yard? Is it in the backyard? How do things work? And you don't always get the information you need to make an informed decision. And so at the risk of having my telephone ring off the hook tomorrow, and my colleagues' phones ring off the hook, usually the best way to find out if there are things that affect your property that you can't see, especially if it's a property that is large or in a newly emerging area of the city, or in an area that seems like there's a lot of change going on, it's not the worst idea to call and ask, so that you can find out. Most folks that are looking to buy a discrete single family home on a, say, 5,000 square foot lot, probably need not worry that the official map is lurking in the background. But I think, there are certainly circumstances like the ones that I just mentioned about, large pieces of property, properties that are in evolving areas, either because they're newly developing, or there's a lot of redevelopment occurring. It might not be a bad idea to reach out and contact your planning department, or email your future district alder to ask if you might have something, what the plan recommendations are, whether or not there's something dissonant in the zoning, or if you have an officially mapped reservation on your property.
Mm-hmm. I'll just say, I asked that because I work in real estate. I'd never heard of official mapping until I was on Plan Commission. I would know to look for my zoning or neighborhood plan when I bought a property, and those are all available online and really easy to find. Is there any plan to put this online, to put the official map online?
I think it's something that we can explore. I know that we have the data portal and we have elements of the official map that are in the that data portal, but whether or how well utilized the data portal is, for folks to know that if they typed in official map, would they get what they're looking for? That's something I think that planning, city engineering staff would have to get together on and see. The answer might already be yes, and because I've, not to be Mr. Inside Baseball, but I use it 5 days a week in my professional capacity, so I don't necessarily look for it on the city's website. It might be there, unbeknownst to me, but that's something that I can follow up on and report back at a future Plan Commission meeting.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. Again, I think it's a great tool. It just makes me think about how we share that. So thank you very much.
Sure.
Tim, I have one question. Is there any requirement the official maps be recorded at the courthouse so that it would be show up on a title search?
No, not that I'm aware of. Not in statutes, not in MGO.
Okay.
And part of the reason for that is the area that we're talking about, being a relatively large space, quarter section, which is going to be, a quarter mile square. Gosh, I hope I'm saying that right. Oh, my high school math teachers are so disappointed. But it is a large enough area that it could be difficult to record against properties. And of course, any recorded information is only useful if you have a good title company that can find it, put it in a title report, and then have the end user be able to understand what that means. But no, it's not recorded. But I think regardless of whether or not it's recorded, I think Commissioner Solheim makes a very fair point that maybe it needs to be more accessible, because especially since, it's never gone away. but it is very much in vogue of recent years with these plan adoption resolutions authorizing us to pursue official mapping and proactive rezonings to more directly and immediately implement the adopted plan recommendations. And so finding a way to get that more publicly available, I think, is something that staff will work on.
Thank you. Alder Field.
Thank you. I wanted to also thank David for joining us and talking to us tonight. Thank you for taking the time. I have a question for staff. So I am inclined, based on this conversation and the maps that we just looked at, to, when we get to discussion on item 5, move to place this on file without prejudice to allow for time to consult with really whatever process you guys need to use to look at alternatives to the maps, as well as traffic engineering to get their take on impacts from drawing that road differently. But before I do that, I wanted to check first with staff to see if doing that would be a major disruption in workload or process, and just kind of get staff's take.
Well, thank you for asking. And with all due respect, I would request a referral off the agenda to an date not specified. That takes us a good way back to the start, but not all the way back to the start, like placing on file would. We can take a look at whether there's other alignments, get feedback from other agencies, reach out to affected properties again, and then bring it back under 77096 as a new public hearing, where we would do a new Class 2 notice, new postcards to property owners within 300 feet. But we wouldn't be going all the way back to square one. And of course, we will keep you in the loop on that as well. Alder Field is one of the sponsors and the alder of the affected property.
Thank you.
Commission member Menendez.
Thank you, Chair. So Tim, I want to go back to what Commissioner Solheim, that discussion. With the plans being pretty readily available online and easy to find, is there a way to link the official maps to those plans? Like, I know last year we did the Oscar Mayer plan, and then we did, or the official mapping, and part of one of the properties was the industrial, I think it was a salvage yard, something like that. If they were to go to sell it, they probably don't know, the new people wouldn't know that part of their land is going to be on an official map now. But if it was part of that plan, it might be a little bit easier for them to find, or a link to it or something like that. So just more of a comment and a question at the same time.
Well, I think one of the things that I'm envisioning, just on the fly during this conversation, this is the Planning Division's plans page. Some of you may have visited. We appreciate it if you have. And right now it includes a lot of useful information, plans of every stripe, going back many, many years, not to rehash the plan retirement question from the West area plan, that discussion that we just had. But it does call to mind whether there would be an opportunity on this page to include a link to the official map. I think a big caveat to that, though, is whether or not we have an ArcGIS project that we could take people to and have them pull up all of the things that are on the official map, which is pretty expansive. And I think part of the reason why we don't have it, or I don't recall that we have it in one centralized location, is it is a really big onion, if you use the metaphor of having to peel back the layers of the onion. So I think it could be a bit of a process to develop something that would be, an electronic online version of the official map. But I think that that's something that staff will take in and begin to discuss, because it is a planning tool, and in many regards, it's not a planning tool dissimilar from all of those plans that we have linked on that plans page now. But I think it would probably take some mapping work in the background. And I know that my colleagues in GIS, both in planning and in city engineering, have lots of gravy for their taters now. So this might not be a small effort to get online so that it can be more publicly available.
Yes, Commission Member Shepherd.
Yeah, just a quick follow-up to that. Is it for cities similar to Madison, do they have the official maps online, or is this something that is it usual to have this information online and accessible to the public, or is it because of what you mentioned, Tim, that just the work and the effort that goes into it, that this is something that's not readily available, sort of, again, with municipalities of similar size to Madison?
I can't speak to other communities, but I can say that maintaining the official map historically is no small effort. This is something that was done on Mylar sheets with grease pencils, and then subsequently digitized in the age of CAD and geographic information systems. The great news is, behind the scenes, we do a fantastic job. That's probably not giving enough credit to how much information we keep for primarily internal usage, including reservations, things that were vacated, how land is platted, where the sewer and water lines are, who maintains the streetlights. I mean, it's really, really deep. However, getting that available for public consumption in a GIS online, like an ArcGIS online tool, would require pulling a lot of layers from a lot of different sources together in a viewer. And that's, I think, the effort to make it publicly viewable is the thing that city staff would have to commit to working
on. Thank you, Commissioner Shepherd. I'd like to, unless there's any other questions or comments from the commission, I'd like to separate these items. I'm looking for a motion for item number 4, which is the official mapping of the High Crossing Boulevard and East Springs Drive extensions near Easttown Mall. Yes, Commissioner Sondheim.
I will move that the Plan Commission forward the official map amendment for Legistar item 77095, the High Crossing Boulevard and East Springs Drive extensions, to the Common Council with a recommendation of approval.
Thank you. Do we have a second? Yes. Alder Figueroa Cole seconded. Would you like to speak to your motion, Commissioner Sondheim?
Just briefly, I think this extension makes perfect sense and does not impede any existing property or buildings.
Thank you. I will assume unanimous consent unless I see a raised hand in opposition. Seeing no raised hands, the motion carries unanimously. The next item is item number 5, Legistar 77096. Do I have a motion? Yes, Alderfield.
Yeah, I move to refer this item to a future meeting with an unspecified date.
Thank you. Do we have a second? A second by Commissioner Sondheim. Would you like to speak to your motion, Alderfield?
Yes, briefly, per the discussion we just had, I think it's worthwhile taking some time to look at alternatives to where this future road could be mapped to see if we can minimize impacts to the property in question.
Thank you. I'll assume unanimous consent unless I see a raised hand in opposition. I see no raised hands. The motion to refer is approved unanimously. Thank you. Moving on to the next item, or items now of business, is are items number 8, 9, and 10, and 11. Those are item 8 is, and they're all related items. Legistar 76899, 437 to 445 West Johnson Street, 430 to 440 West Dayton Street, and 215 to 221 North Bassett Street, Fourth Alder District. Consideration of a demolition permit to demolish for the demolition of 10 residential buildings for a proposed residential redevelopment. Related item 9 is Legistar 77208. It's a substitute item creating section 28.022 to 628 of the Madison General Ordinances to change the zoning of property located at 437 to 445 West Johnson Street, 430 to 440 West Dayton Street, and 215 to 221 North Bassett Street in the Fourth Alder District from planned development and DR2 Downtown Residential 2 District to Urban Mixed Use District. Related item 10 is Legistar 76900. At the same address, it's consideration of a conditional use in the proposed urban mixed use district for a multiple family dwelling unit with greater than 8 dwelling units. Consideration of a conditional use in the UMX district for a new building greater than 20,000 square feet and more than 4 stories, and consideration of a conditional use in the UMX district for outdoor recreation, all to allow construction of a 12-story apartment building with 232 units. Related item 11 is Legistar 76903, approving a certified survey map of property owned by Core Madison Bassett LLC, located at the same location as the above items in the Fourth Alder District. I will ask Chris Wells to give a staff presentation on this item. Chris?
Thank you, Chair Cantrell and members of the Plan Commission. As noted in the staff report, staff note that this proposal is consistent with the comprehensive plan and development plan, particularly its recommendation with the 6 and 12-story residential building proposed on this site. Staff believe that the zoning map amendment standards, as well as the land division or combination standards, can be found met. Regarding the demolition standards, the Commission should give careful consideration to the findings of the Landmarks Commission, who found that 2 buildings at 219 and 221 North Bassett Street have value based on being a product of an architect of note. Considering, however, that the buildings themselves were not found to be historical, cultural, or architecturally significant, on balance, staff believe that the demolition permit standards can be found met. Regarding the conditional use standards, staff have concern regarding conditional use standard number 9. As summarized in the staff report, staff are concerned with the internal orientation of the majority of the townhome units, as well as the design, lighting, and security of the paths, which allow access to these unit entries. Subsequent to receiving the initial approval from the Urban Design Commission on April 26th of this year, the applicant developed a mock-up of a revised first floor plan with the 6 stories portion's main entry flipped to the West Dayton Street side, and individual townhome entries eliminated and replaced with private patios. While the revised plan has not been reviewed by either agency staff or the UDC, it has been included as a draft exhibit of how the issue of the townhomes access could be resolved. Given this and the other concerns described in the report, staff suggests that the Plan Commission consider if a referral to the Urban Design Commission for final approval and to fully vet a plan set which shows the draft design changes fully fleshed out before returning to the Plan Commission would better enable the commission to find the standard met. Should the commission instead wish to approve the building this evening, conditions of approval have been recommended by the Plan Commission to allow the applicant to work with city staff and the Urban Design Commission to finalize the design. Staff note that the neighborhood associations for this area, the Campus Area Neighborhood Association, or CANA, and the Capital Neighborhoods Incorporated are requesting referral to the May 22nd Plan Commission meeting. Their referral request, as well as feedback regarding a number of design-related issues, has been uploaded to the Legistar item for this request. I would also note that Alder Verveer is in support of the referral. I see he is on the call, and he can certainly speak more to this if he wishes. With that, I am happy to answer questions after the public comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. I'll open the public hearing and ask Heather to announce the first registrant.
Thank you, Chair Cantrell. At first, we have 3 members of the development team wishing to pool their time for 9 minutes. Brian Munson of East Lakeside, representing Core Spaces. Trina Sandschafer of Williamson Street, representing Kaler Slater. And finally, Austin Scott Pagnota of North Lakeshore, Chicago. So the 3 of them will have 9 minutes.
Thank you. Proceed, please.
Thank you. Good evening. Brian Munson again. Glad to be here tonight to talk about an exciting new project for student housing within the downtown area. Typically I'd start with how this is built out of the adopted plans, but I think staff did a great summary of how this meets the standards of approval and the guidelines within the comprehensive plan of the downtown plan. If you could go to the next slide, please. Instead, what I'd like to do is talk a little bit about how we got to tonight, because this has been a very deliberate discussion. We've had a great dialogue with city staff, with Alder Verveer, with the commissions, and with the neighborhood. And we really appreciate all the input that came into this project that have led to substantive changes throughout. Included in this process, which spans back from a kickoff in November of last year, have been presentation to the Landmarks Commission, 2 informational presentations to the Urban Design Commission, which resulted in very substantive design changes. Discussion with CNI and CANA through both their leadership last year, a presentation to the Mifflin Neighborhood Association monthly meeting, a steering committee meeting, and a postcard neighborhood meeting here yet last month. This is culminated in, as you heard, staff recommendation for approval for the conditions that this project has set forth, as well as initial approval by the Urban Design Commission, which specifically noted support for the architecture. There are a few small details to work through, lighting, the garage door, and the townhomes. And as Chris mentioned, we have submitted a concept for reorienting the townhomes so that they have interior access and access out to Dayton Street. And while we do appreciate the dialogue with the neighborhood, we respectfully request action by the Plan Commission tonight, as it's critical for moving this project forward. We feel that we have met the design criteria and the changes that have been requested of us, and that the remaining elements of a step back in affordability have been addressed by the UDC initial approval and by the staff report. We also would note that significant sustainability initiatives have been integrated into the design as requested by the neighborhood. Like all projects, timing is critical, especially in today's financial climate. And we appreciate action tonight so that the project can move forward in a timely manner and move into finalizing our financing and getting into construction. As such, while we understand the neighborhood's comments and appreciate the discussion, we do ask for approval tonight of all 4 items. And with that, I will cede the balance of my time over to Trina Sandschafer to discuss the design.
Thank you, Brian. Next slide, please. As I've mentioned, thank you, Brian and Plan Commission. Trina Sandschafer, Executive Vice President of Kaler Slater. We're pleased to have had such active involvement from the city and neighborhood on the project. Here you can see that we are UMX zoning, and our site does bridge across both a 12-story and 6-story portion of the site. Next. Next slide. Thank you. Here, back one, please. Yes. Here you can see the context of our site and surrounding residential buildings of similar scale, all on 3 street sides that make up our site. Next slide, please. The site plan respects all required setbacks, as well as adding additional setbacks at the first floor entries. On the left side is the 12-story residential building with activated streetscape. The primary residential pedestrian entry is on Johnson Street, called out here with diagonal enhanced paving. A bus shelter is also provided. The first floor is lobby and entry, as well as townhomes. Upper floors are residential units. On the right is the 6-story portion of the building with the primary vehicle entry off Dayton, as requested by the neighborhood and the city. 1 level of below-grade resident vehicle and bike parking is provided. Short-term parking is provided in the building for deliveries. Townhomes are on the first floor. Residential units are on the floors above. The building is within required height limits and below the Capitol view limit. Activated green roofs are provided on top of both portions of the building. Next slide, please. Here you can see the enhanced landscaping on all sides of the project. Particular attention has been paid to the pedestrian experience all the way around the building, with significant landscape improvements. In particular, the trees and planters on Johnson and Dayton Street. Native plantings are considered throughout the landscape plan and green roofs. Next slide, please. We're pleased to share the massing and materials with you tonight, which have been developed in accordance with the UDC and the neighborhood. A masonry base respects the neighborhood materials and datum lines. Above, a white metal grid offers articulation and balconies, while composite wood materials add warmth and visual interest. The building was intentionally designed to break down the scale of the overall massing and provide interest at the corner. The UDC has commented on their alignment with the architectural massing and expression, which we worked closely with them to develop over the course of 3 meetings. Next slide, please. At the primary pedestrian entry, you can see the recessed first floor, which creates an enhanced pedestrian experience with landscape and additional street space. The space also provides ADA access. Activated uses at the first floor include a fitness center and lobby, which add life to the street. A canopy calls out the entry, while balconies add visual interest to the upper portion. Next slide, please. Turning the corner, the same base and upper materials continue on the 12-story portion. The massing has similar articulation with recesses and balconies breaking down the scale as requested. The townhomes at the first floor are enhanced with a privacy fence, welcoming lighting, and ample landscape. Next slide, please. On the 6-story portion of Dayton Street, the materials are complementary yet distinct, which was a request by the neighborhood. The masonry base continues and has townhomes on Dayton and along the interior lot line. Fiber cement panel is introduced on the upper portion. Reveals and articulated massing allow for light and air and accessible space. Enhanced landscape is provided, particularly at areas where the building meets neighboring buildings. We're working very closely with the UDC to finalize the garage entry by lowering it and the townhome entrances to be internal to meet their requested minor updates. They have given their initial approval recommendation. With that, we welcome your questions. Thank you.
Is there another speaker?
Apparently not wishing to speak now for the development team.
Okay.
My apologies. We do have other registrants, however.
Yeah. Could you read those in?
Yes. The next registrant is Cleo Lee of Spring Street, neither supporting nor opposing and wishing to speak.
You have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Cleo, and I am here representing the Campus Area Neighborhood Association, who were the chairs of the steering committee for this project. The steering committee for this development proposal respectfully requests that the approval of this project is deferred by the Plan Commission to the May 22nd meeting at the very least. We've been concerned with the public engagement process for this project, and we believe that there needs to be additional time to alert the public and solicit feedback from residents, especially those most affected by the proposed development, such as tenants, potentially displaced students, Mifflin District residents, and more, as well as other community stakeholders, to ensure we have a comprehensive understanding of how this project will affect the quality of life in this neighborhood. At this point in time, we do not believe that there has been an adequate opportunity for the public to provide meaningful input, which could have been duly considered and implemented within the proposed development. Kenna has followed a predictable and consistent process of multiple engagements with developers, especially with core spaces. We've partnered on this development with the CNI Mifflin Neighborhood District due to the West Johnson Street border between our districts. We will also partner with the Mifflin residents on the upcoming Johnson Broome Gotham Street core project. For this development, the Campus Area Neighborhood Association and Capitals Neighbor Inc. were first alerted to the proposal in November 2022 when they were undergoing their pre-application process for submission. An initial meeting was planned for the neighborhood for February 2023, but the plans fell through with the ensuing election activity, and the development team provided materials and updates from UDC informational hearings that they participated in throughout March. The development team officially filed their application in March 27th and presented the project at the Mifflin Neighborhood Association on April 5th. Our first steering committee was via Zoom on April 13th. At this meeting, they introduced the Urban Design Commission graphic package, where they were granted initial approval. For the neighborhood postcard meeting on April 27th, the development utilized their Urban Design Commission presentation and were able to answer supplemental questions. So public engagement on this project has been minimal in comparison to the other development proposals we've facilitated in the past few years with core spaces. New construction can have a positive or negative effect on the shape and character of the entire urban block. Buildings and sites are not isolated occurrences. Their design should respect, reinforce, and enhance the surrounding property. This proposal is centered along a major street that provides a connection between UW campus and downtown Madison.
Leo, your 3 minutes are up. Heather, could you call the next speaker?
Sure. One additional speaker for this item is Evan Bonsall of West Johnson Street, neither support nor opposed and wishing to speak.
Can you proceed? Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to speak tonight. My name is Evan Bonsall, and I live on West Johnson Street, right across from this proposed development. I'm an active member of the Campus Area Neighborhood Association and helped write the request for referral that Cleo was just describing to all of you. I think there are two things that need to happen before we move forward with this proposed development. First, we need to have a public engagement process that will be truly inclusive and capture the questions, concerns, and vision of the neighborhood, especially a public engagement process that will include the voices of those who will be most affected by this development. As a neighborhood resident, I have not felt throughout this very expedited public engagement process that folks from the neighborhood have had an opportunity to truly help shape this development proposal. And there's been a noted lack of engagement from students and also from current residents of the structures that would be demolished if this project were approved. And I think a large part of that has to do with the rushed nature of that public engagement process, as well as with the fact that it took place during the busiest time of the academic year at UW-Madison. Also, speaking for myself, I think it's very important that with limited developable space downtown and a really urgent need for more affordable student housing downtown, that affordable housing be a component of any new high-density student housing development, as we've seen at the Olive project, for example. The Downtown Neighborhoods Coalition Affordable Housing Resolution requests that we have at least 15% of the units or beds in new downtown student housing proposals being affordable for households earning 30% of Dane County's area median income or below. And currently this is proposed as a 100% market rate higher end development. And I think that we need to have more neighborhood engagement, especially from the students who would actually be living in this building in order to try to see if we can find common ground. I just want to note that as a resident of the neighborhood, I welcome more neighbors, welcome more folks in our neighborhood. We have a massive need for more student housing downtown. And I hope to look out my window sometime in the near future and see a nice new high density building there with hundreds of students living in it. But I think that we need to refer this to a future Plan Commission meeting, allow additional public engagement to take place by CANA and other entities, and hopefully have a much better development that will truly benefit the neighborhood at the end of that process.
Thank you, Evan. Your 3 minutes are up. Thank you.
Excuse me, there is one more registrant from the development team. My apologies. Austin Scott Pagnata of North Lakeshore Drive did wish to speak as well.
Okay, Austin, you have 3 minutes.
Thanks, Heather. Thanks, Bradley. Shouldn't be a long conversations as I think we yielded some time together with Brian and Trina. But thanks everybody for taking the time tonight. Just wanted to kind of reiterate and close some points out that Brian and Trina went over so far. Mainly the timeline that's being spoken about in depth here. I think it's really important to note that on November 10th and November 30th, January 9th, 11th, February 13th, April 5th, 13th, 26th, and 27th, all materials provided at those meetings were shared with each neighborhood group. And we proactively reached out to schedule meetings with the neighborhood groups to do what we've done on all of the developments we've completed here in Madison, which is engage the community. We can only control so much of that process and how many people show up. We love to see engagement from the community, and I think we've more than tried to make materials and meetings available to everybody equally. And we also think we've run a very good and well thought out process here, and think that's why we are recommending to take action on this item tonight. As Brian was alluding to, capital markets are extremely volatile right now. And we think we have, gathered all of the necessary steps and information needed to be at this point in the development.
Thank you, Austin. If that's the last speaker, let's see. Does the commission members have any questions for the registrants who've spoke? Yes, Commissioner Menendez.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, for the development team, I have a question regarding EV and the ADA parking. On the staff report, it shows 0 for both. Can you provide an update on that or explain why there's no ADA or EV charging?
Let's see here. So from the EV charging, this is proposed to meet the requirements of the ordinance. And that was noted on the parking levels. If it was left off, that is an oversight. And the same would be for making sure that we have accessible ADA parking for the building. Simply stated, it's a code. It'll be followed.
Yep.
Okay, so can you expand a little bit? Like, how many EV charging stations do you have planned?
Peter, do you have that plan in front of you? Well, I'm looking here as well.
Also, expanding on Commissioner Menendez's question, are you retrofitting the building so we're moving towards electric cars so that it could easily expand the number that you have right now, which is apparently around the minimum number?
Thanks, Bradley. Yeah, I think we should actually be over the minimum slightly. And yeah, we are thinking about the future in EV spaces in particular. We actually picked the spaces closest to the garage entrance as EVs sometimes catch fire and you want to have quick access to put those out. That's like some things we're thinking through. Additionally, we are making sure that the building will be able to accommodate additional spots in the future.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. Commissioner Solheim.
Thank you. Quick question on the management plan for the rooftop pool area. It notes that the rooftop deck will have hours typically opening at 9 a.m. and closing at 10 p.m. on weekdays and 11 p.m. on weekends. Is that stated closing time of 10 and 11 p.m. typical or a set time? I couldn't tell from reading that.
Yeah, that's typical hours.
So is that a required closing time or is that flexible? I guess that's my question.
That can be flexible, yeah. Maybe I'm misunderstanding your question, sorry.
I guess we would generally see a hard closing date for on the weekends, not, flexibility to change that to 2 a.m., for example. So I'm trying to understand if that is an actual closing time.
Sorry, yes, that is an actual closing time. Sorry about that.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
And then I noticed, and this is probably in the plan detail, but it's easier to ask, the 7 temporary stalls off of Dayton that are for deliveries. Are those before the garage door, and how are they signed so that people actually know to go there instead of just pulling over on the street?
Yeah, so those are designed very intentionally to try to avoid, we have obviously bus lanes on Johnson Street in front of the main entrance, bike lanes along Bassett. So we want to encourage any deliveries to utilize the Dayton Street side. So those stalls are outside of, so they are accessible from the street. And then there is a garage door once you go down into the lower parking area. So those are separated and security controlled. There would be signage, obviously no parking along the whole frontage, as that parking will be going away for the bus upgrades. And then there would be signage and directions for tenants to highlight those for use by deliveries as well as rideshare.
Okay, so it's signage on both Johnson Street and Dayton?
Yes, that is correct. Okay. And also management will be watching for that to make sure, because we recognize that that's a busy corridor, and engineering and planning were very diligent in wanting to make sure that the vehicular entrance is off Dayton and that is utilized for those services.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you. And then in that same area, is that where the trash pickup occurs? It looks like the bins are rolled to that area and then picked up. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. They'll be rolled out to the street and picked up on the street.
Okay. One other question, and I'm looking at the original set of plans, not the revised townhouse sheet. So this may have been adjusted, but the fencing that was along the walkways, or now the patios, how tall is that fence, and is it a solid fence?
So that fence is a slat fence. It is intended to be between 4 and 5 feet tall. There's a little bit of grade change in there, but the intent is to create an enclosure point, but not preclude visibility. Mm-hmm. And so that's why the design of that was done intentionally. And I think that even if they with the proposal to change from an exterior townhouse entrance to an interior hallway entrance, that fence would remain and would create that enclosure for the residents, similar but shorter than the fence that is adjacent on the Lux.
Okay. And again, in the original design, that walkway, was it fobbed on each side or is it open?
There would be a gate control on each side, yes.
Okay. That's all for my questions right now. Thank you.
Do the commission members have any other questions? Okay. Commissioner Shepherd.
Yeah, just a quick comment, question about the revised plan. If I could ask the development team, was it your understanding that the revised plan, has that been seen by UDC, or are these revisions that have been made since UDC?
So at the UDC meeting, there was quite a bit of discussion about the access for the townhomes and a recommendation from UDC to revisit that to create continuous interior access spanning from Dayton all the way to the Johnson Street lobby. And that's what the revised plan does. So what that is proposing to do, and we submitted it to staff for consideration and discussion and anticipation of submitting that plan to UDC to respond to their condition on the initial approval. And again, that would be doing is the fence would remain, the sidewalk connections would be dropped in favor of patio access adjacent to the units. So again, exactly the same as the Lux next door. And then all of those units would have an interior hallway access with an entry off of Dayton that would span by hallway all the way back to the front entrance on Johnson Street.
And those are the only changes to the revised plan compared to what was originally reviewed by UDC.
Correct. Right now, that is the case. There are two other elements they want us to look at, which we will be incorporating. One is lowering the garage door height off of Dayton, so the entrance to those shared parking stalls, and that is being accommodated. And then a reduction in the lighting level on the top floor, and that is being accommodated as well. All of those plans are going to be submitted to UDC on Monday, the 15th, for consideration at their meeting on the 31st.
Thank you.
I have one question. Brian, maybe you can address this, but in the staff report, it said several items on the rooftop do not comply with the Madison General Ordinance and will therefore need to be removed, such as a pool equipment room, any elevator not necessary to comply with the building code, and any other structure not listed in the permitted height exception list. Can you address that?
Yeah, that was in essence a design oversight in terms of the storage room for the pool equipment that will be moved down one level. And then I believe what they're requesting is instead of having all of the elevators go to the top floor, that only one would go to the top floor or two, depending on code requirements, and that'll be adjusted. Beyond that, the remainder of the elements on the rooftop, there are some mechanicals on the 12th floor, which are allowed, and then everything else would be furnishing and not structural.
Okay. Well, thank you for explaining that. Do any of the other commission members have any other questions? Seeing none, I'll therefore close the public hearing. Do we have questions for staff? Yes, Commissioner Solheim.
Thank you. I have a logistical question or clarification. It seems like there's some options in terms of there could be approval with a condition of UDC final approval. There could also be a referral to go back to UDC and then come back to us. Are both of those options?
Yes, we wanted to include conditions so that the Planning Commission had the option of approving it, given the final sign off by the UDC, adding additional conditions if you had them about blank sections of the facade, what have you. certainly based on CANA and CNI's feedback. But if you felt that a referral to the UDC to vet the elevation, because obviously moving the main entry on the 6-story portion to the Dayton Street side would affect that facade, and if you had concerns about the potential resulting, elevation, as well as other design elements, having it vetted by the UDC and then come back was also an option. So we wanted to give you a menu of choices, I guess.
Thank you. That's helpful, Chris.
Are there any other questions for staff? Do I have a motion then, or Alder Revere, would you like to speak?
Yes, thank you very much, Chair Cantrell, and good evening, commissioners. Sorry, to be honest, I'm in a Bassett neighborhood meeting right now. I'm trying to mute that meeting. So as you heard Chris Wells state in his staff report, indeed, I am adding my voice to those you've heard tonight during the public hearing in support of referral of these 4 items. I don't want to get into the merits of the proposal, but do want to speak to process, if I could, a little, and respectfully request that the commission indeed refer these matters at least until your next meeting on May 22nd. I think in the interest of compromise, minimally a referral to May 22nd Plan Commission meeting would go a long way toward assisting with improved input from stakeholders. In a perfect world, I would love for there to be a re-referral until after the Urban Design Commission has a recommendation of final approval for you, plan commissioners. But obviously that is an option. But again, I'm respectfully suggesting at a minimal this compromise of re-referral to your next meeting. With that said, you already heard from Cleo and Evan, who are both elected leaders of the Campus Area Neighborhood Association, that the process here was unfortunately not fruitful in their minds and the minds of their colleagues, that it seemed rushed, and I concur with that. I won't get into a lot of the reason why, but I will say, first and foremost, and it was mentioned by Evan, if you look at the academic calendar, this is final exam week at UW-Madison. And the proposal only really started being discussed toward the end of the spring semester by the neighborhood associations. And that obviously is a crunch time for all students rushing with their final papers, projects, and exams to complete those and prioritize those over their volunteerism with the neighborhood association. The reality is that the timeline for this proposal has always been construction of the summer of 2024. Let me repeat, 2024, not 2023. So I must confess that I and perhaps the neighborhood leadership rested on our laurels, thinking that this application did not have to be rushed, that the letters of intent, the purchase agreements with the many various property owners on this block are to allow the existing leases and all new leases to run through May 31st of 2024. And again, that if approved, the project would break ground in the summer sometime of 24. You heard Austin mention briefly, and I suppose Brian as well, again, apologies, I've been trying to be in 2 meetings at once, explain that the development team believes that they need full public-facing entitlements as soon as possible so that they can go to their capital markets and finance the project, although it wouldn't break ground until next summer of, again, next year. I respect that. I hear them. That's why I'm suggesting the compromise of referral for 2 weeks as opposed to indefinitely, as you did with your last agenda item. Additionally, I'll mention that the leadership of the Campus Area Neighborhood Association in their meeting most recently on Friday night pledged that they would go door to door and volunteered, in fact, to go door to door and solicit further input from area stakeholders that did not respond to the postcard for the meeting in late April, or that are on various email lists and so forth, advertising the neighborhood meeting. The fact that we only had 3 real discussions between the 2 neighborhood associations and the development team, I do think speaks volumes. For other proposals of this scale, that is 10, 12-story student-oriented apartment proposals, we absolutely in the past have met more than 3 times at this point before the item comes to a plan commission public hearing. So again, this is all about process and respect for the 2 neighborhood associations that are requesting referral. Again, in a perfect world, it would be nice to have the Urban Design Commission final approval. At the last UDC meeting where this was discussed, I thought the way that the direction of that meeting was going is that the motion actually would be to refer to a future UDC meeting, but in the spirit of trying to be helpful and move the development along, they granted initial approval so that this could be before you tonight. So I'm happy to answer any questions. I can't promise that if you do grant the referral we're asking for, that the proposal will be substantially different 2 weeks from tonight when you might see it again. But I think out of respect to the volunteer, again, neighborhood activists, the stakeholders that are asking for this additional 2 weeks of time to have a dialogue with the development team and to solicit further input from their neighbors, that we owe it to them that at least 2 week referral. And I ask you to respectfully do that, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. Commissioner Solheim.
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify dates I was trying to track in. So it sounds like the development team would be resubmitting for UDC on May 15th. And our next meeting is a week from that, the 22nd, but UDC will not review until the 31st. Am I getting those dates correct?
I believe you are, Commissioner. Chris can confirm. But that's my understanding.
Okay. And so if we were to wait until after the UDC review, our next meeting is June 12th. Okay. So about a month from now. All right. That was the clarification. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Menendez.
Thank you. So another clarification, since we can either choose to refer all of these with one item going to UDC and the rest going to the next or June 12th Plan Commission, or we can vote on 8, 9, and 11 and refer 10. Is that correct?
Chris, can you respond to that?
I think you could. They're all contingent. Well, I mean, they're impacted by each other, so I don't know what advantage it would result. I don't know if Heather has thoughts on.
No, I was going to say the same thing. I don't think it would make a material difference with regard to the overall schedule. They are interrelated, but yes, you could have different actions for each of the items.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from the commission? Seeing none. Do we have a motion here? Yes. Alder Figueroa. Sorry, Cole. Thank you.
Yes. So I mean, I can give it a try. So based on, do we want this to return then to the June meeting or to the 22nd back to us?
Well, that's up to you. The Alder is recommending 2 weeks. but urban design doesn't meet until the end of the month. So urban design will have to act on it. If we refer it just for 2 weeks, it will have to be contingent on urban design giving final approval. So we could either have it in 2 weeks, or if you prefer to have urban design's approval before we act, you could have do it after they act, and that would be throw it into the June meeting. And
Okay.
do you have any comments on that?
Did you ask for staff comments?
Yeah. Do you have any comments?
Yeah, I guess I just want to state my understanding here. So Alder Verveer, you had said you'd like referral for 2 weeks in order to sort of strike a compromise and let the development team get back in front of Plan Commission. My recommendation is that if the Plan Commission makes that referral for 2 weeks, the Plan Commission should still ask for something. There should be a reason for that referral. And my suggestion would be that the Plan Commission would like to see design revisions, moving in the direction of what they intend to submit to the Urban Design Commission for that final design review. I think it's fine to do it that way, but I just want there to be a clear rationale or reason for that referral to May 22nd.
I was just going to be part of the staff request. But I think somebody else has questions.
Okay, Commissioner Shepherd, do you have a question or something to add?
Oh, sure. Just a follow up. So for staff, it would, and I guess I'm asking this question of staff, staff would need to have an updated or supplemental report documenting, again, sort of the revisions to the plan. I think that should be, as Heather points out, absolutely clear. And I don't know if we can require, and I guess the 2 week delay, the referral would allow the development team to do some additional outreach. And we cannot mandate that, but I guess that would be one or the other, sort of maybe an informal sort of, once again, rationale for the referral. And I think that's all I have to say at this point.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Menendez, do you have any other comments?
Yes. So I think part of what we're discussing is we want to review for the final approval, right? I think that was part of the discussion, which I think makes sense. And then we want to refer all the items to the June 12th Plan Commission meeting. So 8, 9, and 11 to get referred to the 12th, and then item 10 would be referred to UDC for final approval, or do we have to send them all back to UDC? I think that's kind of one of our things we're confused on. So Heather,
yeah, Chris, go ahead. You're going to take that one.
I was just going to say that the UDC has a separate Legistar number for this, so it's a parallel process that they make a recommendation to you. So I would just refer, if you're going to refer one, I would refer all 4 of them to the same meeting. And in the meantime, UDC will review their portion of it and make a recommendation. But you don't need to refer just the conditional use, although that does include the UDC's. Yeah, I don't think it's a necessary step.
The UDC is only granted initial approval, so automatically it will be referred back to UDC for final approval.
Yes.
So if there's any additional conditions that the Plan Commission wants to impose on this project, we should, in our referral, even if we do it to 2 weeks, we should specify to UDC exactly what we want them to see, and that may be the inclusion of the patios now, the revised plan that the development community developer has provided, walls that may be not articulated like we would like to see, or any other condition that we would like to have the Urban Design Committee to look at, other than what they've already specified. I think the three conditions or areas that they have already specified that the development team has to review. So I think that UDC will automatically see this no matter what on its June meeting for final approval. But and I would keep all of these items intact, moving together rather than piecemealing them out, because it's a stand. It's there. If one fails, they all fail. So I think that we need to forward them as one package, if that helps.
Okay, can I give this a try?
Yes, go ahead, Alder.
I'm going to keep it very simple, just going to use the language from staff, and any additional things that we want the urban design to check, we can probably send them, we can make those notes on the 22nd meeting when we discuss it again. So here it goes. Okay, so for item 8, 9, 10, 11, let's just start 7, 6, 8, 9, 9, 7, 7, 208, 7, 6, 9, 0, and 7, 6, 9, 3. We'll like to re-refer those items back to the Plan Commission for the meeting of May 22nd with a fully vetted plan set, which shows the draft design changes fully fleshed out before returning to us on May 22nd. So we can do a better discussion at that time to ensure that the standards are satisfied. Is that enough?
Okay. Would you also like to include
the contingency of the decision from the Plan Commission, from the urban design on the June's meeting?
Yes. What about including the public review outreach that was discussed by the Alder and the community group?
Do we have purview over that?
Commissioner Shepherd, do you have something to add?
Oh, yeah, I guess it might be a friendly amendment, but to include the recommendations by staff in the staff report. Again, that should be revisions to the development plan that staff identifies in the staff report. I think it's on page 11. Those are some of those are listed there.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'll
Go ahead. Well, can we have a vote on the amendment? Let's see. Was that an amendment, Commissioner Shepherd, or was that just inclusion of the staff recommendations?
Just an inclusion.
Okay.
Thank you.
Commissioner Menendez, do you have something to add?
Yes, I'd ask if we can also include adding into the final plans the ADA and the EV charging on the plans. Those are not on there, and I think those need to be on there as well.
Is that a friendly amendment, Alder? Commissioner?
If staff is okay with that language, I'm fine with that.
Okay, thank you. Heather, would you like to add anything?
I just wanted to note that we still need a second to the motion,
Okay.
the growing motion.
Okay. Do we have a second? A second by Commissioner Menendez. So are there any other amendments to the motion? If not, I'll If anyone objects to the motion, please raise their hand. Commissioner Menendez, you have something to add?
Yeah, I just want to clarify, are we going to the May 22nd?
Yes, the May
Plan Commission or
22nd
the
Plan
June
Commission.
12th?
No, it'd be the May 22nd Plan Commission meeting.
Okay.
Yes, Alder Field.
Thank you. I'm not exactly sure I followed the details of the growing amendment that we're about to vote on. So I'm wondering if we could talk that through with specifics like number of EV stalls or kind of whatever we're asking for there.
I think Commissioner Menendez just asked that they be provided on the plan and more and specify the number. Is that correct, Mr. Commissioner Menendez?
Yes, to meet the minimums per MGO. Yes.
Okay.
They do.
They do. Okay.
Staff comments report notes that they do meet the minimum.
Okay. Chris, do you have any other comments?
Just to that point, the application form notes that there are 5 electric vehicle ready stalls and 2 electric vehicle stalls. I believe that those do meet the code, but they are noted at least on the application form.
Okay. Okay. Well, the Alder has recommended that we refer this item to the May 22nd meeting. That's the motion and the second that we have. I'll assume unanimous consent. Alder, do you have anything to add? You have your hand raised. No. I'll assume unanimous. Chris?
Sorry, to clarify. So if it goes on, so there's a UDC meeting on Wednesday. They can't meet that. But if it was to go on May 31st, that would be the next meeting when it could be reviewed. So if we wanted it reviewed by the UDC before coming back, if that's I'm in a different loop of
yeah. The motion on the floor is to refer it for 2 weeks into the next Plan Commission meeting on June 22nd. And we can pick up any additional comments for urban design at that meeting, actually, for their 31st meeting, if we choose. So we have a motion on the floor. So if I'll assume unanimous consent on this motion, unless I see a raised hand in opposition. I see no raised hands, so I'm assuming the motion passes unanimously, and this item will be referred to the May 22nd meeting. Thank you. Moving on to the last items on the agenda are items number 14, 15, and 16, and they are all related again. And item number 14 is Legistra 77015, 826 Williamson Street and 302 South Patterson Street in the 6th Alder District, consideration of a demolition permit to demolish 2 commercial buildings. Item number 15, Legistra 77016, 826 Williamson Street and 302 South Patterson Street, 6th Alder District, consideration of a conditional use in the traditional shopping street district for buildings exceeding 4 stories and 60 feet in height in a transit-oriented development overlay district, consideration of a conditional use in the TSS district for dwelling units in a mixed-use building with greater than 60 units, and consideration of a conditional use in the TSS district for buildings with non-residential use occupying less than 50% of the ground floor, a frontage facing a primary street, all to allow construction of to construct a mixed-use building with 4-story wing consisting of approximately 3,734 square feet of commercial space, 55 apartments on Williamson Street and in the 3rd Lake Ridge Historic District, and a 5-story wing consisting of approximately 864 square feet of commercial space and 133 apartments on the South Patterson Street. And finally, related item 16, Legislature 77017, approving a certified survey map of property owned by Threshold Development LLC located at 826 Williamson Street and 302 South Patterson Street in the 3rd Lake Ridge Historic District, 6th Alder District. I'm going to ask Chris Wells again to present the staff report.
Thank you, Chair Cantrell and members of the Planning Commission. As discussed in the staff report, given the building's 30-foot step back from the Williamson Street property line at the 4th floor level, which is recommended by the Williamson Street Design Guidelines, the Build 2 plan, and also the general consistency with the comprehensive plan's height and massing recommendations, which recommends for the Williamson Street parcel, neighborhood mixed use development, which is 2 to 4 stories, up to 70 units per acre, and community mixed use for the rear South Patterson Street parcel, which recommends up to 6 stories and 130 dwelling units per acre. Also, the nearby 5-story buildings fronting the bike path, and the findings of the Landmarks Commission, staff believe that the conditional use standards can be found met. Staff also believes that the approval standards for demolition permits and land divisions can also be found met. I would note, and it's discussed in the staff report, but the concept of a zoning lot, kind of think of a mall where there are many different parcels that subdivide, like East Town or West Town, but it acts as one unit. And so this is functionally similar to that, but there are 2 parcels. The Williamson Street parcel is in the district. The South Patterson Street parcel is in the TIF district. There's a firewall separating the 2 of these, but there is shared access across, in order to get to the Williamson Street portion of the garage, you have to drive down the ramp, which is on the South Patterson Street parcel. So this is overly complicated, but that said, staff notes that a considerable number of public comments have been received over the past week and have been included in the public record. Many pertain to the Prairie Garden, which lies along the Capital City Path in the city right-of-way along the northern property line of the site. Specific conditions of approval regarding the design of the garden and the proposed building and kind of how that relates have been recommended by the Friends of the Isthmus Prairie Path Garden. And I'm sure that there are several people that are registered to speak in more detail about that. Lastly, there was a request for a memo from the Assistant City Attorney regarding the review by the Landmarks Commission and the proposed 2-story certified survey map. I just want to note that this request was received too late for the Assistant City Attorney to respond before this meeting, but staff will certainly pass on that request tomorrow morning. And in the meantime, just want to make clear that the Landmarks Commission did indeed review a 2-lot CSM and granted a certificate of appropriateness back on June 6th of last year. It was for a proposal to shift the line, I think it was 14 feet, the common lot line to the north. The Landmarks Commission approved that, but without that 14-foot extension. So effectively approving this 2 lots as is currently configured. And with that, I am happy to answer questions after the public comment.
Thank you, Chris. I'll open the public hearing. Heather, can you announce the first speaker?
Yes, thank you. Again, we'll have the applicant team pooling 9 minutes among 3 individuals. First, Kevin Burrow of University Avenue, representing Kanothi Bruce Associates, Jacob Morrison of West Lakeside, representing Threshold Development, and then finally Tyler Krupp of Atwood Avenue, representing Threshold Development.
Okay, please proceed.
All right, good evening. This is Kevin Burrow with Kanothi Bruce Architects. Thank you very much again for your time this evening in regards to reviewing our proposed development here. As you can see on the plan in front of you, this is the proposed redevelopment for what's commonly known as the Strucken-Irwin site. Strucken-Irwin Fence Company operated here for many, many years, and the site has since been vacated. So we're proposing a mixed-use development to utilize this very ideal located site for urban infill. You go to the next slide, please. What we have before you is proposed, as was described by Chris, is a mixed-use development occupying 2 separate parcels, but considered one zoning lot. So all amenities and access to the development is all shared between these 2 parcels, with the main vehicular access off of South Patterson Street, which takes you down to the underground parking. You also have a surface parking area accessed off of Williamson Street, which fronts along the western facing side, which provides parking to the common areas and public access areas, where we have co-housing space, co-working space, I should say, and then a public active gym area. And then we also have a commercial space fronting along South Patterson Street for a small retail space. And the balance of first floor is a mixture of housing units, studios 1s and 2s, and then some common area amenities, and then a large plaza area shared between both parcels. You go to the next slide, please. Here you can see the overall basement level layout. It may appear like one contiguous basement area, but it's actually 2 separate buildings with a firewall located directly on the property line with one shared access down and separate garage doors between, but there is a pedestrian connection as well. So if you happen to park in the southern wing, but actually live in the northern wing, you can have access via the pedestrian connection underground. We are providing parking for as many residents as possible, while providing surface parking as well for commercial use. And then again, the enlarged first floor you'll see here on the right-hand side shows the common area layouts predominantly located in the Williamson Street building, and then apartment layouts predominantly in the South Patterson Street building, with the main entry off of South Patterson Street, and then also a main entry off of Williamson Street, and then the plaza area located in between. You go to the next slide, please. And then as far as the upper floor plans go, you have a mixture of studios 1s and 2s, pretty consistent throughout both buildings. You go to the next slide. And then you can see where the Willie Street building does step back at the 3rd floor level at the 4th floor. And then the Patterson Street building continues up to be a total of 5 stories. One thing I wanted to highlight in the overall site layout is that we are accommodating the enlarged terrace as requested along Williamson Street, so we can have an 8-foot terrace to provide additional street tree plantings. And then we also do intend to preserve the prairie gardens along the bike path as well. This will be spoken to in more detail further in our presentation. Next slide, please. And with this, I'll turn it over to Jacob Morrison to speak to the exterior architecture.
Thank you very much. I'm Jacob Morrison. I'm a lead designer at Kanothi Bruce. This is the elevations of the Williamson Street branch of the building, of the 2 different lots. The Williamson Street side of the building has gone through the landmarks approval process and been found to be compliant. Just to highlight what's going on here, the top elevation you're seeing there is the actual side that faces Williamson Street, which is divided into 2 major sections, one of which is primarily commercial on the ground floor, and the other which is residential from top to bottom. They are articulated in slightly different brick colors, but use materials and materials and colors and proportions that are common to the neighborhood, thus the landmarks compatibility approval. If you go to the next slide. What we're looking at here are the elevations for the Patterson Street building. So this is in a separate lot between the bike path and the Williamson Street building, whose narrow end faces the Patterson Street side. The top elevation is the actual elevation that faces the Patterson Street side, the Patterson Street itself. So that is the primary entrance to this building. In the background of that elevation, you can see elements of the portions of the building that get wider as it gets further back. The building is quite long, so it's articulated in several different portions. The bottom elevation shows the portion that is closest to Willie Street, but along the bike path. Its materials are corrugated metal panels, colored flat metal panels over the windows and doors, and then flat gray panels just around the edges to provide a difference of texture and color to create some variety along the length of the facade. The ground floor is masonry, and it's a masonry that is similar to the Williamson Street building to bring some of those design elements back into this side. If you go to the next slide, please. The next slide shows the center portion, which is done in brick. The idea is to show a building that is similar to the older brick warehouse and office buildings that are in the neighborhood. And the metal and corrugated panels sections around it are closer in style and materials to the older existing metal warehouses that are across the street from this building on Patterson Street with the blue and corrugated metal. You may have seen the Dr. Evermore birds in front of them. So that the two different parts of the building speak to different historical eras of the area without necessarily repeating them or being a mock-up of them. Next slide. This is the side facing, the top elevation here faces the interior courtyard. It's similarly designed and detailed with a number of brick details. And the metal and corrugated metal and flat panel with colors are also similar to the rest of the building. And at the bottom elevation there is the elevation that is along the parking ramp. Next slide. This is a shadow study that we had done. You can see the area to the north of the buildings are primarily open along the bike path. That's where the predominant shadows fall. This is the spring and summer. The next slide. Similarly, this is a fall and then winter when, of course, the sun is at its lowest and the shadows are their longest. The next slide. This is a rendering of the Williamson Street building. Next slide. The other side of the Williamson Street facade. And the next slide. This is the side parking lot for the commercial access. The ground floor, this portion of the building is commercial. And Tyler Krupp from Threshold can speak more to the arrangement of that. Next slide. And this is just a close-up of the street engagement of the two parts of that same building that face the street and how the walk-ups interact with it and how the storefronts interact with it. Next slide. Just a closer up view of the commercial section. Next slide. This is the Patterson Street building facing Patterson Street, and you can see the brick section in the middle there in the background, and the textured corrugated metal panels and the flat metal panels and the colored panels over the windows. Next slide. A view more centered on the brick section. The next slide. Then this is from the other direction. You can see the bike path and the railroad tracks that are along that side of the building. And the next slide. This is the interior courtyard. While the lower garage level has a single firewall that separates the two, above the ground plane, the buildings are actually separated by approximately 50 feet with a shared landscaped plaza for all the residents to use in between the two buildings. And the next slide. And I'll hand this over to Tyler Krupp from Threshold Development to explain how the micro units work.
Thank you, Jake. Thanks, Chair. My name is Tyler Krupp. I work with Threshold Development Group. I grew up in this Willie Street neighborhood. I currently reside here. My family's been doing development work in the neighborhood for about 40 years. I consider it the most desirable place to live in all of Madison. We're really happy to be working on this project. We feel good about it in a lot of ways. Share a few of those with you. First, we feel like Jake Morrison and KB have really found a historically sensitive architecture that allows us to add much needed housing units on a rare urban infill site.
I'm sorry, Tyler, your combined 9 minutes are up.
Whoa, that's not nice. Thank you.
Heather, do we have any other speakers?
Let's do. We have The next speaker is John Coleman of Dickinson Street, supporting.
Okay, John, you have 3 minutes.
All right, Chris, if you could start the slides I provided for you. My name's John Coleman. I live on the near east side of Madison. I've helped take care of the Isthmus Path Prairie Garden since 1997. Although I have been very concerned about truly affordable housing throughout my residence in Madison, today I'm going to talk about this project strictly from the point of view of the Isthmus Path Prairie Garden. The garden is a great asset to residents and visitors, and I'd be glad to provide you with additional information if you're so interested. But what I'd like to do is focus on the fact that the last few days have been a success story of how a developer and a community group can work together for their mutual benefit. This morning, Mr. Krupp and the Friends of the Isthmus Path Prairie Garden agreed to protections for the Prairie Garden. They're in the email that commissioners should have received this morning. Not only are there protections, but there are also enhancements to both the garden and to Mr. Krupp's proposal. At this point, the Friends of the Isthmus Path Prairie Garden are asking that you incorporate the 12 items that were agreed upon as conditions in your approval for this project. In conclusion, we're excited to work with Mr. Krupp and his partners on the ideas floated during our discussions and look forward to the benefits for both our garden and his project and their residents. I'd be glad to answer any questions that you might have or provide additional information. Thank you.
Thank you. Heather, are there any other speakers?
Yes, several. The next speaker is Pilar Gomez Ibanez of Dewey Court, neither supporting nor opposing.
Thank you.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, and thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Pilar Gomez Ibanez. I live in the Marquette neighborhood, and I'm here to ask for your support to protect the Isthmus Path Prairie Garden as our neighborhood is gaining some new housing nearby. I want to say just a few words about why the garden is so valuable and why it's great that we look like we're moving towards an agreement on this with the developer. The garden is a rare stretch of high quality, well-established native habitat on the isthmus. It's over 2 decades old, and time is everything for a prairie. Many species of flowering plants here can take 15 or more years to fully develop. If they're damaged, they're not easy to just replace. So it'll be great to protect the treasure that we have already. It's a vitally important place where pollinators, birds, and wildlife can survive in our city in a time of climate change. A great diversity of people also enjoy the garden daily on foot and by bike. You can see parents and kids, nearby workers taking a walk on lunch break, people having a restful moment at a picnic bench. It's a place to experience the beauty and the thrill of nature in the city, including foxes, red-tailed hawks, and threatened species like monarch butterflies. Just down the bike path is an example of why we pushed for protection and feel it's so important. Before construction at 722 Williamson, there was a native planting by community volunteers in the public right-of-way. There was nothing official put in place to protect that planting, and during construction, nearly the whole right-of-way was fenced and used by the developer. So several years later, it's used mainly as a dog bathroom. A public space was lost. The Friends of the Isthmus Path Prairie Garden have asked for some simple protections to make sure this doesn't happen, and I really appreciate the developer's openness to these protections. So we're asking the Plan Commission to support a successful outcome for everyone by including them as conditions of approval for the project. I think everyone will benefit from this, including the developers and the new residents who will be welcomed by an established, gorgeous garden at their back door, and the native creatures who depend on it for life. Thanks again for your time and for considering this.
Thank you. The next speaker?
Speaker is Ann Walker of Winnebago Street, neither supporting nor opposing.
And you have 3 minutes.
Good evening. I'm a longtime professional landscape gardener, and I have professionally managed downtown gardens and green spaces, including in our public right-of-way. And I've done that work both as the owner of a business and as a longtime volunteer. It's been both an honor and a challenge. Development and street reconstructions can really drastically alter our green spaces and our tree canopy. Isthmus neighborhoods are green space and park deficient. That's why our public right-of-way is so vitally important to get right. And our bike and ped paths really offer an opportunity to incorporate and maintain our green corridors and increase resilience in our city. One of the challenges, especially in our public right-of-ways, is getting and remaining on the same page with all the departments at the city, as well as immediate neighbors and the general public. So as a longtime volunteer, I'm so pleased and hopeful about the opportunity to do just that. Having agreed upon conditions in writing is so essential. People forget heads of departments and heads of a company can change. So getting on the same page with departments and developers, as well as the neighborhood, is essential to our green spaces flourishing now and into the future. The conditions that the Friends of the Prairie are asking for are some of the same priorities and policies that are supported in the comprehensive plan, the sustainability plan, the pollinator report. And the hallmark of a good relationship is good communication and staying on the same page with each other. So formalizing the agreed upon conditions in relation to the Prairie Garden will help all of us stay on the same page. Thank you.
Thank you. I assume there's no other speakers?
One other speaker and then a few willing to answer questions. The final speaker is Linda Lennertz of South Patterson in opposition.
Okay, Linda, you have 3 minutes.
Hello. The Friends of the Isthmus Path Prairie Garden have submitted proposed conditions of approval, and these conditions are needed to protect the garden. Proposed condition number 29 in the staff report does not necessarily limit the use of this right-of-way. Rather, it seems condition 29 leaves it up to staff to determine the amount of use. For example, 802 Regent, as I stated in my letter. The developer appears amenable to most of these proposed conditions, but we have had several projects where the developer has changed after approval, and without these conditions, there would be no assurance of the garden being protected. And that's what these conditions all are. It's the basis of protecting a public resource. Most of these conditions are merely treating public property as though it was private property, such as no access for construction activities, runoff, and snow dumping. Regarding the fence, the Plan Commission has, in the past, required fencing when property abuts public parks. And though this is right-of-way, it has the same characteristics of a public park in many respects. Although Alder Rummel's comment letter indicates that she understands that these voluntary agreements are not subject to Plan Commission conditions, I don't understand. There was a development in Marquette where the developer voluntarily agreed, in exchange for neighborhood support, that the development would have 2 affordable units. This, however, could not be made a condition of approval due to state law. The proposed conditions here for this development do not appear to be similarly constrained. The proposed conditions might be unusual for the most part, but do not appear subject to any prohibition. If these proposed conditions cannot be made conditions of approval, I do hope that a commissioner or alder will ask staff for an explanation of why these proposals cannot be made a condition of approval. I believe that the residents who are interested in this should have a full understanding of why the prairie could not be ensured of protection. Secondly, just a brief comment on the legal question of whether land consolidation as a single zoning lot needs landmarks approval, and what happens with the historic district designation, which have been referred to the city attorney's office. To me, this seems these may be issues that may merit referral until answered by the city attorney's office. Thank you.
Thank you. Heather, other speakers that are listed?
Sure. There are three who don't wish to speak but are available to answer questions. Jonathan Stevens of Atwood Avenue, Chris Warren of South Patterson Street, and finally Kevin Yeska of Horizon Drive in Verona.
Okay, thank you. Do the commission members have any questions for the speakers? Yes, Commissioner Solheim.
Thank you. I was wondering if Tyler Krupp could continue his discussion of the micro units that was cut off, and then I have one more question for him.
Yes, go ahead, Tyler.
Thank you, Commissioner Solheim. I appreciate it. Chris, is it possible to put Jake's last slide up? I think there was one just prior to this, where he was showing a floor plan. Yeah, there we go. So I'll try to stick to the question. I was wanting to share with you aspects of this project that we really like. One of them I wanted to share was an experiment we're doing here with micro units. You can see 9 of them here, ranging in size from about 280 square feet to about 400 square feet. These are all in the Willie Street building. This experiment is doing 2 things for us. One, it's an attempt for us to contribute to affordable housing in Madison without using tax credits. The overall rents in these units will be much lower than studio units and should allow accessibility to a desirable neighborhood for people who might not otherwise be able to live here. The other thing these micro units do is they allow us to experiment with new ways of creating community. One of our experiences with multifamily buildings is there's not a lot of community within the buildings, but also between the buildings and the neighborhoods. And you can see here, there's a lot of common space between these micro units that's meant to invite interaction between the micro unit tenants. And we're hoping that'll create a sense of community that spills over into the rest of the building. You can see adjacent to the micro units too, there's this commercial space, which we're conceiving as a public-private amenity space, where we'll actually be inviting the public into amenity spaces that are normally private. We're imagining a co-working space, a fitness wellness space, probably a cafe. The hope is that too will create a sort of site of interaction between tenants and neighborhood that will generate community. Thanks, Commissioner.
Thank you.
I think that's
Thank you. I appreciate that overview. My other question was, do you have, John Coleman spoke about the 12 conditions agreed upon, and we received an email. Have you seen those, and do you have any comments or clarifications or issues with those that we should be aware of?
No issues. We've seen them. We greatly appreciate the effort of John and the group to preserve that space. It's one of the reasons we like this site. We intend to preserve it and respect it, and we have no problem agreeing to all 12 of these. There's some areas for further discussion, but those discussions will be in the shared spirit of preserving and protecting this space.
Great. Thank you, Tyler. I appreciate it. That's all the questions I have right now.
Okay, thank you. Do the commission members have any other questions for any of the speakers? Seeing none, I will then close the public hearing. Do you have any questions for staff? Yes, Commissioner Shepard.
Yeah, could there be an explanation of the question that was brought up in terms of the agreement, why that cannot be part of the Planning Commission's actual recommendation?
Heather or Chris? Heather.
It's what Alder Rummel
Go ahead, Chris.
talked
Sorry.
about, recommended in what she stated in the letter that was sent. So,
Right. I can start. So I've spent much of today tracking down city agencies to have certain conversations about how those could be done. I think everyone is on board with making it happen. It's just zoning, for example, has kind of jurisdiction only up, on private property versus changes that are involved with the city right of way. It could involve a consent to occupy permit through traffic engineering. So I had talked with John Malloy of traffic engineering, and his colleague who handles the consent to occupy was not able to speak earlier today. And so I think they were a bit hesitant to weigh in, but in terms of responding with a memo, but there's changes that are in the right of way are under the jurisdiction of traffic engineering. And I know there's a comment, maybe it wasn't in the final list here, but about stormwater runoff and certain things would involve other city agencies. So tracking them down, I think I don't have particular concerns, but I would want other city agencies to have the time to weigh in fully on any concerns that they have about this. So I don't know if Heather has other thoughts on that, but.
All right, thank you.
Heather, do you want to further comment?
No, I think that was great. I think by and large, we don't have concerns about the 12 standards, just taking some time to absorb them. And I think if the Plan Commission would like to incorporate those 12, some of them are somewhat redundant to standards already in the, or to conditions already in the report. But if the Plan Commission would like to incorporate those 12 with the understanding that the developer and the neighborhood group have discussed and agreed upon these, I think that's fine. I want to give one example that's just, it's just a little bit awkward. There's a condition that it's number 4 in the list generated by the Friends group. It says that a short path will be constructed by the Friends of IPPG through the garden. That type of condition is really awkward to put on a development team. I think again, just a few things like that really aren't within their control might be good to have some softer language on the body of conditions. But by and large, I think they're not concerning.
Okay. Thank you. Commissioner Soltan, did you have a question?
Actually, I was just going to ask about how that could be worded, and Heather answered my question in advance. So thank you.
Okay, great. Good. Any other questions for city staff? Seeing none. Do we have any comments from the Alder? Yes, Alder Rummel.
Thank you. Hi, everybody.
Welcome back.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah, I'm really happy to hear that we can maybe do more than just memorialize these conditions. I kind of thought from my earlier understanding, since they were not part of the city right away, we didn't have as much authority. But given the tweaking in the number 4, I think, I really would support trying to incorporate them. And it's really been, I'm now on the micro level of this part of the thing, but it's been really fun to watch the Friends group and the development team kind of work through this. And so I'm really thrilled about that. And I think back to number 29 in the staff condition, that seems a little soft and wiggly too. It'd be nice if that were a bit stronger. More like definitively, you can't have construction impact or vehicle use on this right of way. I think that would go a long way to making it all a win-win. To the bigger question that I asked the city attorney to look at about the land combo versus the division, I hadn't really thought about it until I read Ms. Leonard's letter. So I feel a little hesitant to ask for a referral on that with all due respect to Linda, but I, because it was approved by Landmarks and presumably some thought went into it, but I really think it's a bigger question that's more than just this project's question. So I can think of another development where having something inside and outside of a historic district really put the kibosh on the development. So, just for the greater good, I think some kind of memo would be helpful. And I'll leave it up to you all if you think it somehow should be referred. I wasn't going to ask for that. So then, overall, I came late to this process. I was, a lot of the work had already happened by the time I got elected. But, and for those of you who worked with me on the Landmarks Ordinance Review Committee, I kept raising this parcel, like, what are we going to do about the Strucken Irwin site? So I think through the Landmarks process, that question was answered. Maybe not to the liking of everybody, but I think a reasonable way to move forward was settled on. And I think it's a really attractive design in general. There's like, I'm not going to be like the enemy is the perfect of the good, but I do support the staff comments about the Patterson facade. I don't really have any answers, but I think, when they notice something's not up to like, what it could be, I want to listen and honor that. So again, thank you all for your time and your service. It's been kind of a long night and kind of meaty. So thank you.
Thank you, Alder. Are there any other comments or questions by the commission members? Seeing none. Do we have a motion on these? And we need separate motions for these items. Commissioner Solheim. Oops, right.
There we go.
There we go.
I move that the Plan Commission find that the standards for demolition are met and approve the demolition of the two buildings at 826 Williamson Street and 302 South Patterson Street.
Unless I see it. Do we have a second? Thank you, Alder Figueroa. Unless I see a raised hand. Would you like to speak to your motion, Commissioner Solheim?
Just to note that Landmarks did find that both buildings did not have historic value.
Thank you. Unless I see a raised hand to object, I'll assume unanimous consent. Seeing no raised hand, the motion is approved unanimously. Proceed. Do we have a motion on the next item? Yes, Commissioner Solheim.
All right, I'll try this one. I move that the Plan Commission find that the standards for conditional use are met and approve the proposed mixed-use building at 826 Williamson Street and 302 South Patterson, subject to the conditions in the staff report, including the facade revisions on Patterson, as well as the 12 conditions provided for the Prairie Gardens as appropriate and permitted by the applicable city agencies.
We have a second. We have a second by Commissioner Menendez. Would you like to speak to your motion, Commissioner Solheim?
Very briefly, I'll just say I think this proposal looks fantastic. I really appreciate the work done with the neighborhood and with Landmarks. I know there's a few revisions on the Patterson facade, but I just want to add, I think the facade on Williamson Street looks really nice. Will really add to the character of that corridor. So I really appreciate the attention to detail on that. And the micro units are very cool. I'm excited to see how those work out.
Great. Well, unless I see a raised hand in opposition, I'll assume unanimous consent. Seeing no raised hands, the motion is approved unanimously. So we have the next item, which is the certified survey map. Commissioner Solheim.
I move that the Plan Commission forward the CSM to the Common Council with a recommendation of approval.
Do we have a second? Second by Commissioner Menendez. Do you have Any other comments? No comments. Unless I see a raised hand in opposition, I'll assume unanimous consent. Seeing no raised hands, the motion is approved unanimously. Thank you. Moving on to the next item on the agenda. We have business by members. Do we have any business by our members? Seeing no business here, except what we've accomplished. Thank you. Secretary's report. Heather, do you have a report?
I do. Thank you. On May 22nd, at our next meeting, in addition to a few of the items that were referred to May 22nd this evening, we'll have the Comprehensive Plan 2023 progress update will be presented by staff. Also, we'll be, as the Plan Commission, reviewing the final report of the Task Force on Farmland Preservation. My understanding is that just today that's been posted on Legistar for folks to review. And then likely a staff overview of the subdivision regulations update as well. Those will really be the main items. So sort of a staff heavy meeting likely on May 22nd. And then the main item on June 12th is the likely opportunity for the Plan Commission to adopt the Reiner Neighborhood Development Plan, and that's in the far northeast area, including the majority of that plan area is not currently within the city, so a long-term land use and infrastructure plan for that area. That's where we'll leave it for this evening. Thank you so much.
Thank you. The next item is announcements, and I'd like to apologize to Alder Figueroa Cole for mispronouncing your name so many times. But thank you for emailing me and giving me, enlightening me on how to pronounce it. Thank you again. Thank you.
I appreciate it.
Thank you. Next item is adjournment. Do we have a motion to adjourn? Motion by Commissioner Solheim and seconded by Commissioner Menendez. I'll assume unanimous consent unless I see a raised hand in opposition. Seeing no raised hands, motion carries. Thank you so much for this meeting and have a good evening. Thanks again. Good night.
Thank you all.